Hello, and welcome to Building a Basic Story. I'm Hannah, an account manager at Tines. Throughout this video, I will be walking through how to build out a basic automation using Tines. By the end of this exercise, you will be able to create a basic story in Tines, set up a form to ingest data into Tines, enrich data using a data source, and send an email to yourself. This basic story will take a list of IP addresses, look up the IP addresses in VirusTotal, and then send an email with VirusTotal information. Before you get started, you will need access to a Tines tenant. If you do not have an existing tenant, you can create a community tenant by navigating to the Tines website, tines.com, product, and then sign up for free. You will also need access to a VirusTotal API key. You can obtain an API key for VirusTotal by navigating to the VirusTotal website, virustotal.com, and selecting Sign Up in the top right corner of the window. You will also need a list of IP addresses to use as data input. I will be using IPs from abuseipdb.com. To begin, we will create a credential in Tines to connect to VirusTotal. Select Credentials, New Credential, and name the credential VirusTotal. Select Text as the credential type, since we will be using an API key. Then navigate back to VirusTotal and select API, My API Key, copy the API key, and then paste it into the value field of the credential within Tines. Now let's create our story. In Tines, navigate to Drafts, Story, and select New Story. Name the story Basic Story. The first action we'll use is a webhook action. Click on the webhook under the Actions pane and drag it to the Story workspace. Rename the webhook to Basic Story Webhook. Then navigate to the Story form. We will be using this form to enter IP addresses that we'd like to look up in VirusTotal. You can rename the form and edit the description if you'd like. Next, set the receiving action to your basic story webhook. This will cause any input entered into the form to be sent to the webhook you added to your story. Next, adjust the field setting to a type of long text, and name the long text IP addresses. Now we can enter some IP addresses. Navigate to abuseipdb and copy some of the recently reported IPs. Paste the IP addresses directly into your form and click Submit Form. Next, navigate back to the Story workspace. You should now see a gray 1 in the top right corner of the basic story webhook. This indicates that the webhook has received an event. Since this story is a draft, the event is held, meaning it does not automatically flow through the story. Held events are indicated by a gray number. Once we have the story built out, we'll need to emit the event to run the story when it is in drafts. Once the story is published, the events are automatically emitted. The next action we'll add to the story is an event transform action template. To find the right template, search for Extract IP addresses under the Public Templates search bar, and drag Extract IP addresses using regex to the Story workspace. Next, connect the basic story webhook action to the Extract IP addresses using regex action. This will allow the events to flow from the webhook action to the event transform action. Now, edit the path of the event transform action so that the action extracts the correct data. Click on the basic story webhook event to review where the IP address data is stored. You can see that it is stored under body.ip_addresses. So this is the path we will want to enter for the event transform action. To do this, click on the event transform action and select Build, and then click on the path. This will open what we call a pill. Delete the entire contents of the path and select basic_story_webhook, period, body, period, IP_addresses. You can see what this path will contain by reviewing the result in the bottom right-hand corner of the pane. Then press Command-Enter to save the path. Next, emit the event in the webhook and see if the event transform action works. To do so, click on the basic story webhook and select Events, hover over the event, and click Emit. You should now see an orange 1 in the top right corner of the event transform action. If you click on the event in the event transform action, you can see the results of the event transform, which is an array of IP addresses. Now that we have an array of IP addresses, we will need to break the array up into one event per IP address so that we can search each one in VirusTotal. To do this, we will use our template Explode an Array. This is also an event transform action. After dragging the exploded array template onto the story workspace, we'll need to update the path to match the path of the IP address array in the extract IP addresses using regex action. The path is extract_IP_addresses_using_regex_IPs. Then emit the event again. Note that there are now multiple events in the exploded array action since we entered multiple IP addresses into the form. Now that we have one event per IP address, we can start getting information from VirusTotal. Tines has many VirusTotal templates to choose from. The one that we want to use is the HTTP request search for IP address in VirusTotal. Drag the search for IP address in VirusTotal action onto the story workspace and connect it to the explode an array action. Next, update the VirusTotal URL to include the path that contains the IP addresses. This is explode_n_array, individual_record. Now we can emit one of the events from the explode an array and review the attributes received from VirusTotal. Now that we have searched for the IP addresses in VirusTotal, we'll want to send an email whenever one of the IP addresses is malicious. To do this, drag a trigger action onto the story workspace and connect it to the HTTP request action. Then click on the trigger action, select Build, and click on the pill under Rules. Delete the contents and enter search_IP_address_in_VirusTotal_body_data_attributes. Next, choose the attribute to build the trigger off of. For this example, choose reputation and save the pill. Next, change the comparison in the rule to is less than and set the value field to 0. This means the trigger will fire whenever the reputation is less than 0. Then emit an event again and note that the trigger's rule matches when the reputation is negative. Now that the trigger is in place, we just need to add an email action. To do this, drag the email action onto the story workspace and connect it to the trigger. Select Build. Enter the email address you'd like to be the recipient of the emails. Then navigate to the body and add the text you'd like to be sent in the email. In this example, send the IP address and the reputation in the email. To do so, you'll need to enter the path to the IP address. This time, instead of typing the path into the pill, copy the path of the IP address from an event and paste it into the pill. Then add a line break and complete the same process to add the reputation to the message. Now that the email action is complete, emit an event to test that the email is sent successfully. Now the story is complete. Thank you for watching Building a Basic Story. I hope you enjoy Tines.